So next up is Kelsey Wicks. Kelsey's topic is Be Not Afraid, teaching JPII's vision of the human person in Catholic schools. So Kelsey Wicks is the Interim Executive Director for Catholic News Agency, CNA. A graduate of the University of Notre Dame, Kelsey worked as a legislative assistant on immigration and refugee-related issues for the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops before she turned down a scholarship to Notre Dame Law School to enter the convent. She joined the Dominican Sisters of St. Cecilia, serving the majority of her 9 years in the convent as a teacher in Catholic schools. Shortly after discerning out of the convent, she became the operations manager for CNA and the ACI group, assisting in the creation of a Catholic news agency in Arabic, ACI MENA, a role she continues in addition to her oversight of CNA. Kelsey, the floor is yours.
Well, Eminence, Excellency, Monsignor, distinguished guests and presenters, baptized Christians, it's an honor and a challenge to speak to you today here in the womb of a Catholicism that chose life in the face of great obstacles and has given birth to so many tremendous saints full of fire and zeal, including the great son of Poland, John Paul II, who we commemorate today and are reflecting upon his thoughts at this conference, John Paul II. So I'm here to speak to you today not as a scholar or a legal mind, but as a journalist and a teacher, a former Dominican sister and a preacher. I did get that to rhyme. I will focus my remarks on the soil where many of these ideas will land, the Catholic school. Across the world where the church is alive, the education of youth is alive. But what is the status of schools and what is the status of the human persons within them? I think one particular moment that we've overlooked in the conference is the connection between Christian anthropology and natural law. Without a coherent vision of the human person, it actually is impossible to understand natural law. I will speak from experience, 9 years teaching in the preeminent order in the United States dedicated to Catholic schools, the Dominican Sisters of St. Cecilia. I taught in a variety of schools, some of which provided very interesting vignettes of life, including the time that I taught at a school where the majority of my class was busted in an industrial acid drug ring. Yes, and these were high school students. I taught at rich schools, poor schools, and everything in between, co-ed and single sex. So I have a variety of experience to draw upon. In each of those schools, one question loomed larger than the others, the question of identity, the question of anthropology, the vortex around which the teenage mind spins. Who am I? And by extension, who is my neighbor? Now, I don't mean that strictly in the Good Samaritan way it can be construed, though I also mean that. It is impossible to love someone we do not know, and by and large, modern man neither knows himself nor his neighbor, because what it means to be human has been lost, both in theory and in practice. What do I mean when I say that what it means to be human has been lost in theory? It is this. In 1998, John Paul II issued his seminal document on faith and reason, Fides et Ratio, and described the collapse of human reason into opinion, a descent of subjectivity into objectivity. In the 20 years since its issuance, it has progressed to the point that conceptions of the human person have ruptured with reality on the most fundamental level. Claims that the body is not me, but that my soul or my will are, my true self, as Gregor pointed out earlier today. These anthropological claims form the basis of the transgender arguments, and they are not just anthropological claims being made by philosophers, but they are being made by students in Catholic schools, at this very moment. The questions which we decide and discuss today bear importance already, now, for future generations. And if you don't think that these arguments occur within Catholic schools, consider a few examples from my teaching experience. A ninth grade boy in a theology class caught watching and passing his cell phone with transgendered porn. A young girl who inquired whether it was morally permissible to like a Facebook post for Asexual Awareness Day. When I inquired why, she said, well, I'm a biromantic asexual. And I said, what on earth does that mean? And she said, she's making an anthropological claim. She said, well, I'm romantically attracted to both men and women, but sexually attracted to neither. When I was growing up, we called that a teenage girl. The sudden proliferation in the United States of boys wearing nail polish or colored sports bras that can be seen through white shirts, or the number of students that are falsely sympathetic to their friends' claims to transition to their authentic self. These are all examples of what is happening in the modern Catholic school, and in some of the best Catholic schools, I might add. In a way, this distancing from nature is a cultural outgrowth and logical conclusion to the ideological rupture proposed by the contraceptive and abortion movement. In that movement, a healthy fertility is rejected, the body does not speak, or actually is not allowed to speak, to the person to reveal something of the human purpose. The destruction of a healthy reproductive system for the creation of new ends, enjoyment or use, parallels the disruption of the endocrine system to create a new identity. These are linked. These are linked. Well, what else is contributing to the loss of knowledge of human nature and theory in Catholic schools? From within and from without, these students swim in a larger milieu of social constructionism, which many of you have touched upon in this conference. The entrance to Catholic schools often happens through literary theory, social sciences, AP classes, and the point about language is not one to be lost. What is at stake with language is not only access to truth of things, but also a cultural patrimony. As Aristotle taught, language is a social good, a common good, an access point to reality. When it is changed arbitrarily, it gives the illusion that essences have changed, when in reality, all that is changed is what the signifier is. Aristotle, in his De Politica, calls the common noun a miracle. It makes social life possible. In Christianity, the role of language is elevated by the very fact that the Word became flesh. Words matter. They become sacred in Christianity. Let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. And when you define and say something is what you say it is, it should convey the truth. A woman is a woman. It is not a woman with a Y. It is not a woman with an X. It is not a man pretending to be a woman. By the way, I was a college athlete. I'm very offended by what is happening right now. So in Christianity, these words take on enormous importance. But in the cultural context, the words also have the, when they are changed arbitrarily, including pronouns, which the clown self, the cat self, the absurdity, the shifting ground of social constructionism not only eats away at any theological truth given in Catholic schools, it makes it seem as though everything is in flux, except math, which I am told reliably by every high school student that we no longer have to do because we have super calculators called computers. But although I joke about its irrelevancy, this also contributes to the fact that the dualism John Paul II warned us about has advanced to an enormous degree. The disembodied idealism and the technocratic empiricism that John Paul II speaks about in Fides et Ratio is what is happening in our schools. You either accept math and anything that's hard, anything that's material, which, by the way, is the precondition to Marxism, is the precondition to wanting a liberation that can lead to justice, or you accept a Gnostic realism of Plato, wherein the soul and the body are no longer connected, and the ideal must be what is true. But the understanding of the human person has also been lost in practice in ways that Catholic school and culture operate that are antithetical to human and Christian anthropology. Online education is one such example. The very fact that the methodology of the information coming at you, which is information instead of formation, means that it's hitting your emotional cortex rather than your deep thinking, contemplative sense of wonder. The very method of online education is antithetical to Christian anthropology. It strands students in a technocratic mastery that values information over wisdom, over the pursuit of truth. Certain trends in education opt for this new model of one-to-one technology where every student has a device. I think that nothing could be more antithetical to the pursuit of wisdom. I mean, when you look at schools that allow phones, which, you know, for teenagers we could just call omnipresent isolating machines. When you look at schools that even allow phones, real human interaction and connectivity is sacrificed over lunch during their social time. They will text the person sitting opposite of them. So this leads me to another quote in Fides et Ratio. John Paul II quotes St. Augustine. "Do not wander far and wide, but return into yourself. Deep within man, there dwells the truth." There dwells the truth. So are our students having access to the truth? Do they have the anthropology that allows them to access natural law? And actually, can natural law assist with the crisis in social constructionism, the dualism that they're facing, the collapse of human reason? And my answer, which is open to disputatio, as any true Dominican would have it, is a resounding no. At least no, not yet. Natural law has within it a teleology that assists man in his discovery of ends, purpose, and therefore meaning. It has a trajectory with a starting point and a consummation, but in the present context, the depth of the psychological loss of meaning, expressed principally in an unrequited desire to belong to someone or someone's, to be known, to be held to account, and just to be held by a worldview and a world, a culture. This has been so damaged by the loss of tradition as to make natural law a path too dark to traverse. It is like using a flashlight when a 1,000-watt operating lamp is required for surgery. And here is where I hear the voice of John Paul II, and not just his voice, but the witness proclaimed in the seminal words of his pontificate. Do not be afraid. Open wide the doors for Christ. Be not afraid. Christ knows what is in man. He alone knows it. It was JPII who taught us again and again, even with the license plates on his Pope mobile, that Jesus Christ alone reveals man to himself. Christian revelation, this is from Fides et Ratio again, Christian revelation is the true lodestar of men and women as they strive to make their way amid the pressures of an immanent habit of mind and the constrictions of technocratic logic. It is the ultimate possibility offered by God for the human being to know in all its fullness the seminal plan of love which began with creation. Again, I would like to echo Gregor's comments that we must understand both who God is, love, and his works, creation and goodness, in order to have access to the understanding of dignity that is the key that opens natural law. The remedy to the relativism of our day, advanced cancer that it is not the stage 1 intervention to recover health. It is the blood transfusion of Christian revelation, defined and defended with the moral clarity of revealed law, known as true simply because truth himself speaks truly, or there's nothing true, as St. Thomas has us sing. And this proclamation is not a philosophy or an ideology, even less is it a moral plan to reclaim man's dignity in the culture, 4 steps to follow me to happiness, Christian Inc., copy mark, trademark, go. It's an encounter from Redemptor Homines. In reality, the name for that deep amazement at man's worth and dignity is the gospel. That is to say, the good news. It is called Christianity, not natural law. This amazement determines the church's mission in the world, the church's fundamental function in every age, and particularly in ours, is to direct man's gaze, to point the awareness and experience of the whole humanity towards the mystery of God, to help all men to be familiar with the profundity of the redemption taking place in Christ Jesus. At the same time, man's deepest sphere is involved. We mean the sphere of human hearts, consciences, events. Who better to model the encounter with the risen Lord than John Paul II, the man who, like the evangelist John, heard, saw with his eyes, looked upon, and touched Christ with his hands, the man whose humanity overflowed in every action, the man who converted us all and many more, not because they understood with precision his intellectual arguments, but because they watched the witness of the life of grace transforming him into a vision of what it means to be a human, to be fully alive. Who better than John Paul II? Well, I can actually do one better. Who better? You. It is not enough to quote the man's teachings in our mouths. We must quote them by our lives. Be not afraid to be saints.
Thank you very much for that.